We're going to break down three players that all have very different standings within the organization. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Thursday, October 24th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome in, everybody. Happy Thursday. I'm recording this about an hour before tip-off of the return of Pistons basketball, which I know for majority of us is go listen to Locked On Pistons. Koo does a great job and navigating through the tough times that are the current era of Pistons basketball. But alas, they are back this evening. Hopefully, should be a fun year and some positive signs of life there. Today, on this show, we are going to break down three players. And the reason why is because one of them is Tarik Skubal. And to be completely honest with you, I don't have a ton of new things to say about Tarik Skubal. Originally, I thought maybe I was going to get like a whole episode out of just Tarik and just talk about how great he was and how great he is and his future on the team and everything. And I quickly realized, I was like, man, he's almost so good that there's not even too much else to say. Like, I'm going to tell you he's really good. We're going to talk about why he's really good for a little bit. We're going to talk about some adjustments that may or may honestly not even need to be made going forward. And then that's it. And like, we're all on the same page. Nobody is questioning whether Tarik Skubal is really good at his job. So there wasn't too much there. So I figured let's have three in one show. Also, because tomorrow's episode is going to be the mailbag. So we're not going to be doing player breakdowns tomorrow. So in order to help, get through everybody on the roster here, we're going to knock out three players today. The first one, like I said, Tarik Skubal is really good at baseball. A 2.39 ERA, a 5.9 Fangraphs WAR, and 192 innings pitched, a 0.92 WHIP, and a 30.3% K rate. Also a sub 5% walk rate, 4.6%. He is incredible. That is ridiculous. Do you know how ridiculous it is to have a K rate over 30% and a walk rate under 5? That's absurd. That is redonkulous. He's got 5 pitches. All of them are really good. 4 of them are borderline elite, 2 elite. The fastball is just straight up elite. There's no question about that. It was one of the best pitches in the entire game of baseball. I believe by run value, it was one of the 10 or maybe 15 best pitches that anybody offered in the entire sport in 2024. In terms of just four-seam fastballs, it was in the top 5 best fastballs in the sport this year. And I think what makes him so unique is when you look at that list, right? And this is just me talking purely run value on Baseball Savant. It's a really interesting stat. It's not my favorite stat in the world because you can have really good numbers against the pitch and still not have it grade out very well. And there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I do think it's a nice tool, at least, like all statistics should be. None of them are end all be all. None of them are gospel, but they all are tools to help, either teach or explain or evaluate a player. I do think it's a nice tool to have in the back pocket. And when looking at the list of the best four-seam fastballs in the sport this year, Skubal jumps out at you because he is the only pitcher in that top 5 to 10 range who he throws his fastball the least of all of those players, right? Everybody else on there has an elite fastball. You're talking about Smith over in Cleveland. You're talking about Hunter Green in Cincinnati, right? Like all of these guys who have elite heaters, and they all throw their fastball, 50 to even 60, 65% of the time because it's such a good pitch. Skubal is so good and his stuff is so disgusting that he has one of the best fastballs in baseball and throws it 33-ish% of the time, 33 to 35% of the time. That is unbelievable. And that is a testament to how good all of his other stuff is, where he can keep you off balance and keep you on your front or back foot because you have to respect the changeup. His changeup is also one of the best pitches in baseball. If you're a lefty, you're getting just absolutely destroyed with that sinker low and inside as well. You're getting crushed with the slider low and away if you're a lefty as well. I just said as well like 3 times there. That was really weird. But you get my point. And I think that is the biggest thing that jumps out to me is, people are like, yeah, he's got such a good fastball. Well, yeah. And the reason why is because all of his pitches are so good. I think when you listen to Alex Bregman in the postseason talk about Skubal, that's kind of the best insight you have. They asked him, like, you guys couldn't hit him. What were you seeing out there? And he just like kind of scoffed. And he was like, yeah, well, you try and hit him. Well, that's not an exact quote. His exact quote was, he has 4+ pitches and he's really tough to time out. And that is time up. And that's the reality of facing Skubal. So one of the things that I'm interested in going forward is he pounded the zone so much this year. I'm genuinely curious, and I'm not saying that he needs to do anything different. He was just the best pitcher maybe in all of baseball. Okay, he had a phenomenal year. But next year, hitters are going to adjust. And I think that one of the adjustments hitters are going to make is they're going to be way more aggressive early in counts. This dude didn't walk anybody, was constantly in the strike zone, at one of the higher in-zone strike percentages of starting pitchers in baseball. And I think that when you look at his numbers against in certain counts, we're getting super nitty-gritty here, you're talking about, numbers that all of them are pretty good, but being aggressive on the first pitch he throws, pretty decent numbers against that. Hitters have 0-1 count, pretty decent numbers. Hitters have against that as well. So I think that there may be a chance that next year that offenses just become way more aggressive against him, or just like, we're going to have to swing early and often because this dude's just going to pound the strike zone. But I don't know if that's needed either. Like, okay, maybe he gets popped once or twice and then goes, all right, I'm just going to start throwing the changeup early. And then he's right back to being on top and digging people into a 1-2 or 0-2 count. He dominated the strike zone to a T, I guess is my point. He, again, didn't walk anybody, struck out everyone. And I think that the next question, if there is another step forward to him, which I think a lot of people would probably just say there isn't. He's going to win Cy Young maybe unanimously. But if there is another step forward, I think it's just, can he get deeper into games more consistently? A lot of 5 and 6 inning outings, nothing wrong with that, especially when the bullpen was as good as Detroit's was this year. But fewer than 200 innings. And he didn't miss a start. He pitched all year and had fewer than 200 innings. So that's partially on AJ. AJ's gonna always play the matchup and doesn't like guys going through the order for the third and certainly not the fourth time. But I think if anybody is going to be able to get stretched out and be able to have that dominance and that ability to go deeper into ball games, it's going to be the guy that's going to win Cy Young, strikes out over 30% of people and walks fewer than 5%. So I don't have too much else to say, really. Like, he, in my eyes, he's the baddest dude on the planet. He's going to win AL Cy Young. Again, as I've said about 6 times already, I think he should win it unanimously. And this is someone that is just a great person to build around, not only for what he does on the field, but like, he's the Tigers nominee for the Roberto Clemente Award. Him and his wife have done fantastic work in the community and done a lot for girls and women as well. It's just, he's just such he's the guy, right? Like, he's the guy that you want to build this pitching staff around and that you want to build this team around, presumably going forward. And I think that's really the only question. The only question involving Tarik Skubal long-term with the Tigers is, how long is he going to be a Tiger? We'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of the show. Let's talk Andy Ibanez, shall we? We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to you all today about our friends over at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start off your season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all of your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, making us your first listen every single day. Shots to everydayers that do tune in every day. And we will, of course, be back tomorrow with a mailbag episode. If you're watching on YouTube, you can put your questions in the comment section of this episode. If you're listening on audio, you can run over to YouTube and put your question there, or you can tweet it at me. You can DM it to me. You can reply to the tweet that I put out that's going to say, hey, mailbag, drop your questions below. However I see it is up to you. But if you have a question about the 2024 Tigers, about the offseason, about the 2025 Tigers, about what I had for breakfast, I don't care. We will try to get through as many as we can on tomorrow's Friday episode. All right. Back to the task at hand, though. We are breaking down 3 players today. Number 2 on the list is going to be Andy Ibanez, everybody's favorite left-handed pitching killer. Had a 241 average, a 295 OBP, a 357 slug. That's a 652 OPS. He was worth 0.8 Fangraphs WAR, walked at a 6.1% clip, struck out at a 25.8% clip. Those numbers don't jump off the page at you at all. Honestly, like they're pretty subpar, to be completely honest with you. But his stats against left-handed pitching, he hit 292 with a 357 OBP and a 445 slug. That is an 802 OPS. And on top of that, and I think maybe the most underrated aspect of his value this year is he played good, solid defense at a ton of different positions. His OAA, outs above average, one of the 2 biggest defensive metrics to look at. That and DRS, are defensive runs saved, are the 2 biggest. I think they both calculate different things. I don't think it's an and or conversation. I don't think it's an or conversation. I think it's an and conversation when talking about those 2. I think they're completely different statistics, and you should use both of them. When talking about Andy Ibanez's OAA at all of these different positions, it was a -1 in left field. Not obviously not a positive defender there, but still around net 0. +1 at shortstop, +2 at third, +1 at first, and +3 at second base. That's just straight up a really good second baseman, and like average at the other 4 positions he logged innings at in 2024. So I think not only do they like him because he's a guy that they can bring in off the bench and can crush any lefty that's put in the game, but I also think that they really like him because he can then provide value beyond that at bat. He can go out and give you plus defense in the field after coming in and pinch hitting in the middle of a ball game. So we all love Andy Ibanez, absolute dog, just a gamer, man. Like, this dude just loves ball. And I love players that have that mentality. Like, just wants to play baseball every opportunity he can. Just seems like a real grinder. Almost 1 win in 99 games. He's a valuable bench bat to have on this team. And you know that when a lefty enters the game, you can throw him in and you're going to get aggressive swings, right? He's not going to go down looking too terribly often. He's going to give himself a chance to do damage. And again, if he stays in the game later, he can also provide you solid defense. Now that we got all the good out of the way, I do have to add a little bit of a downer to the Andy Ibanez conversation. This was, however, a slight step back in production this year. He struggled mightily in the second half of the season. And one of the biggest reasons for that was because all season he struggled against velocity. He hit really poorly against fastballs. And even if you want to just take away every single at-bat against a righty the entire season, just left-handed pitchers that threw fastballs, he still had a sub-200 batting average against those. Not very good slug on the season either. His slugging percentage took a nosedive this year. If pitchers have figured out that they can just pump fastballs by this dude, especially up and away, then he's going to get beat, and his value is unfortunately going to disintegrate, honestly, pretty quickly. His power numbers, like I mentioned, took a really large step back from 2023 to 2024. He also swung and missed and struck out way more than he did in 2023. This is a guy that, like, one of my favorite things about him was that he was a strike zone dominator that didn't walk, because he also just didn't strike out and didn't swing and miss. He struck out over league average, like a pretty solid amount this year. So I think there is still absolutely value for Andy Ibanez if he is back next season. I want to make that very clear. And if he is back, I'll be fine with that. He's on a cheap deal. If he struggles out the gate the first couple of months of the season, you can make a change pretty easily and not have it affect payroll or anything like that, the 40-man roster, etc. But there are some legitimate concerns going forward, as awesome as he is. We'll talk about his role on the team going forward at the end of the show as well. Let's talk about our third player here. Reliever. I want to do one starter, one hitter, one reliever. We can kind of get all aspects here. Brennan Hanifee came up and was a complete revelation for the Tigers this season. Had a 1.84 ERA, a 1.13 whip, had a 19.2% K rate, and a 5% walk rate. Honestly, when I watch Brennan Hanifee and when I look at his numbers as well this fall, he reminds me a lot of Jason Foley early on in his career. This is a righty that just pumps 95 to 96 mile an hour sinkers. He's 26 years old. He doesn't get a lot of swing and miss. He doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. That K rate is sub 20%. That is very low. He's mostly a two-pitch pitcher. To righties, you're going to see sinker slider. To lefties, you're going to see sinker changeup. But man, can he sling that bowling ball sinker, man. He absolutely can rifle that thing into the bottom of the zone, and it is very difficult to get under as a hitter. I think there is some serious development work that still needs to be done. I don't think he's very far from a finished product in my eyes. I think his secondary pitches, not a surprise. We had this conversation with Foley for 3 years now too. Right, the slider I don't think is very great. I don't think the changeup is super effective yet either. I think he's very far from perfect, but that sinker is really, really, really good. I'm telling you, that is a really good pitch. And if the Tigers go into next season with two different guys that can throw high velocity sinkers and get ground balls whenever they want, I will be unbelievably happy, assuming that is paired with or in some combination of some strikeout and swing and miss guys that are added this winter. That is still a big need. You can't have a whole bullpen of just pitch to contact ground ball guys. But having two guys that, man on first, bases loaded, one out, etc., you can call on to and get a ground ball more times than not. That's going to be very, very valuable for this team, assuming they have some strikeout guys too. Let's talk about the 2025 season and what we can expect from these three guys going forward. We will do that right after this. Got to talk to you all today about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They have so many great features over there as well. Their new feature is called Game Time Picks, where curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, etc. You just turn the feature on, you toggle the feature, and you get your total up front. It is awesome. They also have zone deals, which are my favorite feature. You can just pick a section, they pick the row and seat, and you save some money that way. And also, as always, your ticket and your purchase are covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and more with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So we are discussing Andy Ibanez, Brennan Hanifee, and Tarik Skubal. Let's talk about the 2025 outlook for these players. Tarik Skubal's is pretty self-explanatory. He's going to be the ace. He's going to be the opening day starter. We know that. And I think the conversation more so around him is what to do with him long term. There's been a lot of conversations about trading Tarik Skubal over the last 2 years. We've had a lot of conversations on this show about trading Tarik Skubal over the last 2 years. This trade deadline was one of them. Last winter meetings was one of them. Last trade deadline was one of them. When he came back from injury, there was a conversation. Got a hair in my mouth. It's my own, thankfully. Goodness. Okay, I'm not cutting it. We ball. So I think, look, man, this is not rocket science. You are trying to win ball games. You just made the postseason. You give the man his money. Okay, we're done with this. You can get a lot of good hitters, and like it's crazy how different this conversation is than it was before the trade deadline when they were 10 under 500 and people had serious concerns about whether this team was going to be anything long term. Now it's like you made the postseason. You know what you need to get through the postseason? A guy that threw a shutout in all but one of his starts in the postseason. He's phenomenal. And this is someone that you build around, someone you build around long term. Now, is that going to happen? Is he going to get an extension tomorrow? I don't think so. And I think that that's more to do with him being a Scott Boras client than it is anything else. But we have yet to see Scott Harris give out big money. And I think that Skubal is the first big, we'll call it a test. I don't think that's really the best word, but for lack of a better term, we're going to go with that. This is really his first benchmark, maybe is the better phrase. Because there's not like, this is guaranteed, this amount of money is the right answer. This amount of money is the wrong answer. It's a spectrum, obviously. But I think that this is the first time we're going to look, okay, this is a high money guy. This is a big money, huge star in this sport. And he's a Scott Boras client. How much are the Tigers under Scott Harris's control going to be willing to give out someone of that magnitude? It's an interesting question. This was his first healthy season. I do not expect him to get paid this winter because of that. And he still has a couple years of control left. They can let him pitch this next year and then extend him next winter. That is what I'm more expecting. I'm expecting it, assuming he stays healthy again this upcoming season. I'm expecting conversation talks surrounding extension to really pick up next winter. Because then he's going to be back against the wall for free agency. You're going to want to get in there and give him his money before he hits the open market. So I don't think this is rocket science, man. Like have I flip-flopped on this probably 80 times in the last 2 years? Yes, I will openly admit that. Absolutely. Right? I've been wrong plenty in my life. I will be wrong plenty more in my life. I'm not going to run away from that. But I think that where you're at right now, it would be ridiculous to entertain trading him. Ridiculous. Now, if they go out and lose 90 games next year, then that changes, right? But that changes because the team has changed. Where they are at today, it makes zero sense to do anything but extend him or stand pat. And I think they're going to stand pat, give him another year, and try to work out an extension next year. That's my thought. I don't have any inside knowledge. I've never spoken to Chris Ilitch in my life. Maybe they're really close to an extension and I don't know about it. But that's the feel that I get. On to Andy Ibanez. As I said, if he is back next year, I'm totally fine with that. I have no issue with that. But it also really wouldn't shock me if he was a roster casualty of the offseason. I know we all love him. He's legitimately, when his Tigers tenure is over, whenever that is, he is going to be one of my favorite Tigers, like that I have watched in the last 5 years. low bar there, but like he's a dog. I adore this man. But the numbers, they declined quite a bit. Like this was not a gradual, like kind of a drop off. He's going to be 32 years old next season with a full season behind him of not being able to hit any fastball. And that's a serious concern. But AJ really likes him for a reason. He still had some huge moments down the stretch and in the postseason. Obviously, one of the biggest hits of the entire postseason. If he does come back, I trust him and the organization to make those adjustments and address those concerns. But those concerns are apparent. They are concrete. That's all. We'll see what happens with him. And then Brennan Hanifee, you know, I think that there's a chance Hanifee's in the bullpen on opening day. I really do. I think the organization liked what they saw from him a lot. I think he gives them some more versatility with the, having multiple pitchers that can be kind of elite ground ball guys. At worst, I mean, he has plenty of minor league options left. At worst, he will be in AAA to start off the season and then get called up at some point, kind of like what Bo Brisky was this year. And at best, he will be, again, a super fun piece that will start off the season in the bullpen and will be in the mix, for relievers back there going forward. That's pretty much all I got on these three guys. We're going to end the show by saying rest in peace to Fernando Valenzuela. Fernando Valenzuela was, well, he played for a few teams by the time it was all said and done in his career, but he is one of the most iconic Dodgers ever. And I think on the field, we can talk about the screwball and Fernandomania, right? That completely swept the continent back in the early 80s. His first, 8 or 9 starts were all complete game victories. He was an absolute sensation, but I think it's so important to talk about his career and not let my generation, right? Like I was still 15 to 18 years away from being born when he came over. But it's so important to talk about him because we need to stress how important he was for the game of baseball as well. My generation, the younger generation, what he did for Mexican baseball, what he did for Latino baseball in general is so important and should not be something that is forgotten. The Dodgers are honoring him a lot as they head to the World Series here. And if the World Series wasn't already big enough, now we have to all mourn one of the greatest and most iconic Dodgers to ever step on a field. Gone too young, was in his early 60s. Rest in peace to Fernando Valenzuela. We will never, ever, ever let any baseball fan for the rest of time forget Fernandomania. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow. Mailbag, drop your questions below. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.